The mailbox, ordinary, banal except for the letter, creamy stationery, elegant script addressed to the new owner. Inside, a chilling welcome. I am the watcher. This house, my family's for generations. Yours now. I'm watching. John and Mary dismissed it, a cruel prank. Their dream home, a Victorian mansion, stood proud for a century. Surely it held stories, but this? Just unsettling. Life continued, unpacking boxes, arranging furniture. Then another letter arrived. This one darker, more menacing. It spoke of their children, their routines. It saw everything. Fear crept in. The playful laughter of their kids, 8-year-old twins, now echoed with an eerie undertone. John started noticing things, shadows shifting too quickly, a feeling of being watched. The once charming antique mirrors now felt like prying eyes. He tried to rationalize it, stress, overwork. But deep down a seed of doubt had been sown. Mary, ever the pragmatist, contacted the police. They were sympathetic but dismissive, no concrete threats, just letters. They promised to look into it, but their reassurances felt hollow. The letters continued, each one pushing them further into a pit of despair. Sleep became a distant memory. Every creak of the floorboard, every rustle of leaves outside the window felt like the watcher drawing closer. John delved into the house's history. Local library archives, musty old newspapers. He uncovered a tale of tragedy, a family torn apart by greed, jealousy, and ultimately death. The original owner, a wealthy industrialist, had died within these walls. Whispers of foul play, a family curse. John shuddered. Was history repeating itself? Mary, meanwhile, found solace in her children, their innocence, a stark contrast to the growing darkness around them. But she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Baths were taken with the door ajar. Bedtime stories were whispered with one eye on the window. The joy of their new home had evaporated, replaced by a suffocating dread. One evening, while John was away on a business trip, Mary heard a noise, a soft scratching at the children's window. Her blood ran cold. She rushed in, expecting the worst, but the room was empty. The window latched. Had her fear finally tipped into madness? She wanted to believe so, but the dread lingered. She held her children close that night, their small bodies warm and comforting against her. She told them stories of brave knights and magical creatures, anything to distract from the terror that gnawed at her sanity. But even in the safety of their embrace, she couldn't shake off the feeling that something was terribly, terribly wrong. Days turned into weeks. The letters kept coming, each one meticulously crafted, filled with chilling details of their lives. The watcher was always one step ahead, always watching. John, once a level-headed businessman, was now a shadow of his former self. His eyes darted around, searching for the unseen menace. His sleep was plagued by nightmares. Mary, her initial pragmatism replaced by a steely resolve, refused to be driven out. She researched home security systems, installed cameras, reinforced doors and windows. The house, once a sanctuary, transformed into a fortress. But the fear remained, a constant hum beneath the surface of their lives. One letter, more chilling than the rest, arrived with a single withered rose. Its scent, sickly sweet and tinged with something rotten, permeated the house. The message was simple: you cannot hide. That night, Mary woke to find John gone. His side of the bed was cold. Panic seized her. She searched the house, her heart pounding in her chest. She found him in the attic, staring out the small, dusty window. His face was pale, his eyes wide with terror. "He's out there," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I saw him, watching us." Mary wanted to dismiss it as another hallucination, a figment of their collective fear. But looking into John's eyes, she saw a truth she couldn't ignore. The watcher was real, and he was closing in. Driven to the brink, Mary decided to fight back. She delved deeper into the house's history. She sought out the descendants of the original owner, hoping to find answers, a way to appease the watcher. Her search led her to a small, forgotten town, miles from their home. The locals were tight-lipped, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and pity. She finally found her way to a nursing home where a frail, elderly woman claimed to be the granddaughter of the house's original owner. The woman's eyes, though clouded with age, held a spark of recognition when Mary mentioned the house. With a trembling voice, she whispered a chilling tale. The house, she revealed, was built upon a foundation of secrets. The original owner, her grandfather, was not the man history portrayed him to be. He was a cruel man driven by greed and paranoia. He had made enemies, powerful enemies, who sought to destroy him and everything he held dear. Fearing for his life, he had built the house as a fortress, a place to hide from the shadows that haunted him. But his precautions were in vain. His enemies found him, and in a single night of unspeakable violence, they took everything from him: his family, his fortune, his sanity. The house, she said, was soaked in their blood, their pain, their rage. It was a place of sorrow, a conduit for the darkness that lingered long after the deed was done. Mary returned home, her mind reeling. The old woman's words echoed in her ears, painting a horrifying picture of the house's past. Was the Watcher one of the victims, their tormented souls seeking retribution? Or was it something more ancient, something wicked that fed on the fear and despair that clung to the house like a shroud? She found John in the attic, his eyes fixed on the street below. He had been watching a young couple, new neighbors who had just moved in across the street. "They remind me of us," he said, his voice hollow, so full of hope, so oblivious to the darkness that festers beneath the surface. Mary put her arms around him, trying to offer comfort, but she knew there was no escaping the truth. The house was a curse, a festering wound on the earth. They had been drawn to its beauty, its promise of a fresh start, only to be ensnared in its web of sorrow. As the sun began to set, casting long, eerie shadows across the lawn, Mary made a decision. They had to leave. They had to escape the house's clutches before it consumed them entirely. They packed their belongings, their movements hurried, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and resignation. As they drove away, the house loomed large in the rearview mirror, its windows like vacant eyes watching them go. They tried to rebuild their lives, found a new home, a cozy cottage far from the shadows of the mansion. But the memories lingered, the letters, the whispers, the feeling of being watched. They couldn't escape the past. One day, while packing away some old boxes, Mary stumbled upon a forgotten item, a small leather-bound journal tucked away in a dusty corner. She opened it, her fingers trembling, and began to read. The words scrawled in a familiar, elegant script sent chills down her spine. It was the Watcher's diary, but it wasn't filled with threats or boasts of power. It was a confession, a tale of love, loss, and regret. The Watcher, it turned out, was not a malevolent spirit, but a heartbroken soul trapped in an endless cycle of grief. He had been the son of the original owner, deeply in love with a woman his father deemed unsuitable. When his father tried to separate them, a struggle ensued, and in a moment of blind rage, the son had killed his own father. Horrified by his actions, he fled the house, vowing to never return. But he couldn't escape the guilt, the sorrow that consumed him. He watched from afar as his family's legacy crumbled, as the house that held so many memories fell into disrepair. He wrote letters not to threaten but to warn, to protect others from suffering the same fate he had. The diary ended abruptly, leaving Mary with more questions than answers. Was the Watcher still out there, his tormented soul finally finding peace? Or was he still watching, his gaze fixed on the house that held both his greatest joy and his deepest sorrow? As Mary closed the diary, a shiver ran down her spine. She knew with chilling certainty that some secrets are best left buried. The Watcher's letters may have stopped, but the haunting legacy of the house on the hill would live on.